first year of running meetings in my company was literally like pulling teeth. People would show up, but they all hated showing up. And after the meetings, they were no more productive than before. And that's the way it was in my business for over a year. But I kept running meetings because I really wanted to grow. And eventually I started tweaking the meeting process, and with every small change, we got better. Our revenue went up, our productivity went up, and our team started to take ownership of key tasks. And because of that, we grew a lot. Now flash forward 20 years, and I've built dozens of leadership teams in my companies. And I've also sat in on meetings with companies that I advise who are doing a few $1 million a year to companies that are doing billions of dollars a month. And every successful meeting that I've run or sat in on includes 5 things. And whether you love meetings or you hate them, if you add any one of these to your meetings, they'll become an accelerant to your growth and just far easier for you to run. So each of my companies has daily meetings. In fact, we have daily meetings, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual meetings. And each one has different goals, and not everybody's invited to every single meeting, but every meeting is run in a very specific way, and I firmly believe that every meeting results in growth for my companies. Now, it wasn't always like that. I remember reading a book years ago, and I was just starting out in business. And the guy who wrote the book said how great meetings are to an organization. Unfortunately, the tips that he gave for running meetings were just so general and so vague that they didn't work for me, or maybe I just didn't understand them properly to be able to implement them in my company the right way. I don't know. But the first year of running meetings was like pulling teeth with my team. They showed up, but they all hated showing up, and after the meeting were over, they were no more productive than before, and that was making me nuts. And that's the way it was in business for over a year for me. But I kept running meetings because I really wanted to grow. And eventually I started tweaking the meeting process, and every small change that we made, we got better. Our revenue went up, our productivity went up, and our team started to take ownership of key tasks, and because of that, we grew a lot. Now flash forward 20 years, and I built dozens of leadership teams in my companies, and I've also sat in on meetings with companies that I advise who are doing a few $1 million a year to companies that are doing billions of dollars a month, and every successful meeting that I run or that I've ever sat in on includes 5 things. And if you add any one of these to your meetings, they'll become an accelerant to your growth. The very first rule that's common among all successful meetings is that everybody needs to know in advance where and when the meeting is, what exactly is going to be covered, who's going to be in attendance, and how to come prepared. And that's all automated simply by creating a meeting agenda and sending it out before the meeting in my companies. The agenda gets sent out just like this. It's 2 weeks before an annual meeting, it's 2 days before a quarterly or monthly meeting, and 24 hours before a weekly or daily meeting. That's it. Let me repeat that. The agenda is sent out 2 weeks before an annual meeting, or if you're running a quarterly or monthly meeting, it's 2 days before. And if you're running a weekly or daily meeting right now, it's 24 hours before. And when you create and send out a simple yet clear agenda covering those things, people come prepared and they come ready to participate. Wow, what a change that makes to everything. The second rule is that all meetings begin with a review of the agenda, and also ground rules like no phones, or mute your phones or things like that. And we follow the agenda closely during the meeting. I mean, super closely, because that trains people to stick within time frames as opposed to getting into conversations that are either not important to the meeting or that are not important to everybody in the meeting. So if there's a topic that 2 people need to discuss more, but the whole team is not needed for it, then those 2 people agree to take it offline and meet after the meeting to discuss it. Now, taking it offline is a term that we use a lot in meetings for anything that's best discussed after the meeting, right? Because it takes our focus. Some topics take our focus off of what's important and things that we need to delve into in order to keep the company and everybody on the team moving forward. And we just take those offline, right? And everybody agrees to use that term if they need to meet with somebody after the meeting to go deeper into a topic. The third rule is that all meetings start and end on time. Nobody should ever show up late. In fact, everyone should get an email or a text reminder, or both, the morning of the meeting and then 15 minutes before the meeting begins. And if somebody arrives late, do not recap what the team just covered so far, because if you do that, you send this message out to everybody that it's okay to be late for meetings and waste valuable time for everybody else. So if Mary shows up late, we don't stop the meeting to find out, hey, where were you? We don't cover what we spoke about so far, and we definitely don't make sure she's comfortable. No, we keep up with the agenda. And if it's a real important member that comes in late, maybe once, because if it happens once Okay, but it should never happen more than once. But if an important member comes late once, just assign somebody from the meeting to bring them up to date after the meeting's over with. That's it. And if somebody needs, and this is super important, if somebody needs to miss a meeting due to an emergency, ask them in advance for their notes or their reports so that you could review their work and so that you could use their notes during the meeting as if they're there. Otherwise, the entire team gets slowed down because they're missing key numbers or key notes that that other team member was going to bring to that meeting, right? We cannot allow, and we are the guardians of our company. You are the guardian of your company before anything else. So your job is to make sure that these meetings are run smoothly and effectively. So if somebody's not going to be there for some weird reason, make sure you get their information beforehand. That way the company continues to move forward. The fourth rule is that all in-house meetings, which would be our daily and our weekly and our monthly meetings, all in-house meetings are run in a room that has no distraction and it's set up for the meeting, meaning there's paper there, there's pens, there's whiteboards, there's waters, whatever you need to run that meeting, it's there. In fact, we don't allow food or really anything to be brought into the meeting other than maybe laptops and notes. And when we do have food in our meetings, which I just said we don't have them in our daily, weekly, or monthly meetings, but we do have food in our quarterly and our annual meetings. And when we do that, we always cater that food so that we decide as a company when to bring the food in, when we're gonna take a break and bring the food in so it's less distracting. And that goes for Skype callers too. This is super important. If a team member is a vendor calling in from out of the country, they need to be on video. Like, that's super important. They need to be on video. And there can't be any food allowed on their end either. We need to be able to see them clearly, because when somebody's on video, they're less likely to get distracted by email or kids or anything else that takes their focus off of our team meeting. Small things like this make a huge difference in determining if your meeting is going to bring your team members closer and grow the company, or if it's going to be a struggle to run. And if possible, you should assign a note taker. And I understand that not everybody can have a note taker in their meetings, but even if you don't have a note taker, within the same day of that meeting, everybody should receive a summary of the decisions made and the action items that are assigned to each person so that everybody's on board and everybody knows what everybody else is moving forward on from that meeting. The fifth rule is that all meetings should be focused on the key metrics. Now, every team member should know the company key metrics. The company key metrics are what's most important to the company. And they should also know their own key metrics, the things that they need to do in order to keep the company moving forward, which when achieved, help the company to meet or exceed their key metrics. Does that make sense? Now, there's a lot of other components to great meetings, like being sure to recognize team members who are exceeding their goals, because people will do more work. People will work insanely hard for positive recognition, but also knowing what kinds of questions to consistently ask. Now, my team knows that every meeting they'll be asked 3 questions. What have you achieved so far this week? What are you focused on today, right? That's important too. Every team member knows they need to have a list of the top 5 things that they need to accomplish that day to help the company to reach its daily targets. And the third question is, what's the biggest obstacle to achieving those 5 things? And by asking those questions to each person every single meeting, eventually, they start to come prepared with better and better answers. And then they start to answer those questions before I even ask them. And that's because they've changed their thought process, because they've heard me ask it over and over again. And when this happens, the results your team gets will become noticeably bigger. Now, running team meetings is simple when you set yourself up for success. Tell me in the comments below which one of those rules that you feel will have the biggest positive impact on your meetings. And if you're already doing these and you want me to go deeper into more meeting rules, then tell me that too. And maybe I'll make a video that shows an actual meeting in progress. And also make sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you don't miss another video like this.
No matter what stage of growth you're at, we all need an unbiased review of what's working and also what might not be working anymore in our business. Because the greatest cause of stagnation in any company, the reason most companies hit plateaus in their growth, is because they fail to see the roadblocks that stop momentum in its tracks.